The Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has spit fire, warning the Kapseret Member of Parliament Oscar Sudi about the rigging claims. Welcome to Kenya Lens Media, where we bring you news updates as they break. Here we talk and analyze politics. And if you're new here, consider subscribing, liking and sharing our content. Also hit the notification bell so that you can be receiving notifications each and every time we bring a new video. Now, the Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has firmly rejected claims that the government plans to rig the 2027 general election. And speaking today in Kisii, the Deputy President defended the Kenya Kwanza administration's record and called for peaceful democratic politics ahead of the next year's polls. Addressing members of the public on Monday, May 25, 2026, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki dismissed allegations that the government intends to interfere with the electoral process, saying the Kenya Kwanza administration will seek re-election based on the development record and delivery to wananchi across the country. This has come after the Kapseret Member of Parliament Oscar Sudi said repeatedly that in 2027, if William Ruto does not win the election, they'll make sure he wins, adding that they will add more votes to his ballot box so that he can be the winner among the contenders. Now, the Deputy President insisted that the government has no need for what he described as illegal assistance to win the election, arguing that investments made since taking office have already earned public confidence ahead of the 2027 vote. And by saying this, he was warning Oscar Sudi against what he said recently about adding votes to the basket of William Samoei Ruto. And as political campaigns gradually begin taking shape across the country, questions surrounding the credibility of the next general election are increasingly becoming part of the Kenya's national political conversation. And opposition leaders have in recent months raised concerns over the integrity of the 2027 general election. And some have accused the government of preparing grounds for possible manipulation of the vote. But on Monday, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki strongly rejected those allegations during the public engagement in Kisii County, and standing before residents and local leaders, the Deputy President maintained that the government's focus remains on development and service delivery rather than political propaganda.
Na mimi nataka niwahakikishia kwamba uchaguzi next year utakuwa wa huru na haki. There will be no interference with the election. It will be free and fair. We will respect the will of the people. We are Democrats. We are Democrats because we are a product of democracy. If we did not have a democratic system, if we did not have an IBC that was independent, we would not be in office today. And because we are Democrats, because we are products of democracy, we will do whatever it takes to make sure next year's election is free, fair, transparent, and the will of the people of Kenya will prevail.
And according to Kindiki, the administration believes in its performance over the past years will be enough to convince Kenyans to grant it another term in office. The Deputy President pointed to ongoing government projects across different sectors, and among the areas highlighted were road construction, electricity connectivity, affordable housing, agriculture, healthcare, and reforms in the education sector. He argued that these investments are already transforming lives in different parts of the country and will ultimately influence how Kenyans vote in the next election. The remarks appeared carefully aimed at strengthening public confidence in the government's agenda, while also countering growing criticism from opposition figures. And as political mobilization intensifies ahead of the 2027, both government and opposition leaders are increasingly framing the election as a defining contest over the country's future direction. And for the Kenya Kwanza administration, the message being presented is one centered on development, infrastructure, and also economic programs. And for critics, however, concerns over governance, accountability, and electoral credibility continue to dominate political debate. In Kisii, Kindiki accused some political opponents of engaging in what he described as premature campaigns driven more by propaganda than practical solutions. And therefore, the Deputy President said that the next election will offer Kenyans a clear choice between development-focused leadership and also divisive politics. Some of the William Ruto affiliated members of parliament and also leaders, including Kapseret member of parliament Oscar Sudi, and recently the deputy governor Ayub Savula of the Kakamega equally echoed the same words, saying that if things becomes hard, the IEBC was elected by William Ruto and is being serviced by the budget that was drawn by the taxes Kenyans pay, and therefore it will be so easy to manipulate the results. And that has brought a lot of chaos and also increased the temperatures in Kenya, where people are calling about upon the IEBC to call upon the leaders who've been saying about rigging elections come 2027. While avoiding direct attacks on specific opposition leaders, his message reflected to the increasing competitive political environment now emerging across the country. And with less than 2 years before the general election, political camps are already consolidating support bases, holding grassroots meetings, and also sharpening campaign narratives. And among the issues now gaining prominence is public trust in the electoral process itself. And that issue became even more central to Kindiki's address when he directly responded to the claims that votes could be stolen in the next election. The deputy president strongly condemned such statements, warning that repeated allegations of election interference could undermine public and confidence in democratic institutions and also inflame political tensions. He described the claims as dangerous and irresponsible, and according to Kindiki, Kenyans must be allowed to participate in the democratic process peacefully, freely, and without fear. And the comments come against the backdrop of Kenya's long and sometimes painful history of disputed elections. And for decades, questions about electoral transparency and fairness have remained among the most sensitive issues in the country's politics. And in several past elections, allegations of irregularities have triggered political unrest, legal battles, and also deep national divisions. That is to remain, statements touching on election credibility often carry significant political weight. Kindiki's remarks therefore appeared aimed not only at defending the government but also at calming fears that could heighten political tension as the election period approaches. And at the same time, the deputy president also addressed concerns about political violence and intimidation. He condemned incidents where citizens are allegedly threatened, attacked, and targeted because of their political affiliations. And according to Kindiki, democracy can only function properly when citizens are free to support leaders of their choice without coercion, fear, or violence. The deputy president emphasized that every Kenyan has a constitutional right to participate in politics peacefully, and his remarks reflected growing concern over the possibility of raising political hostility as campaigns become more active across different regions of the country. Historically, periods leading to major elections in Kenya have sometimes witnessed increased political tension at the grassroots level, and leaders from across the political divide have repeatedly urged supporters to avoid violence and also maintain peace during the political competition. And in Kisii, Kindiki sought to position the government as committed to peaceful and also democratic elections. He stated that institutions responsible for managing the electoral process must be allowed to operate independently and also professionally. That statement appeared particularly significant at a time when public scrutiny around electoral institutions is expected to intensify ahead of the polls. Kenya's Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission has often found itself at the center of the political contestation during previous elections, and as the country prepares for another major national vote, confidence in such institutions will likely remain critical to maintaining public trust and also national stability. Meanwhile, political activity continues accelerating across the country, and government leaders have intensified development tours and also public engagement aimed at showcasing projects and also consolidating support. Opposition figures are also increasing grassroots mobilization efforts while criticizing government policies and also raising governance concerns. The result is an increasingly active political atmosphere long before the official campaign period begins. In many counties, political rallies, consultations, and alliance-building meetings are already becoming regular features of public life. Communities are closely watching political leaders as conversations about economic hardship, unemployment, healthcare, food prices, and governance continue shaping national debate. For many ordinary Kenyans, the next election is not only about political parties or personalities, it is also about expectations for better living conditions, economic stability, and national unity. That reality is likely to shape how leaders communicate with the public in months ahead. The government, through leaders like Deputy President Kindiki, appears determined to frame the coming election around development achievements and also continuity. And at the same time, opposition groups are expected to continue questioning governance performance while pushing for electoral accountability and also reforms. As the competing narratives continue emerging, public confidence in democratic institutions may become one of the most important factors influencing political stability before, during, and after the election. Kindiki's remarks in Kisii therefore go beyond a simple political defense. They reflect broader national concerns about peace, democracy, trust, and also conduct of future elections in Kenya. And while political competition is expected to intensify over the coming months, many Kenyans will also be hoping that the country avoids the divisions and tensions that have sometimes accompanied past election cycles. For now, both government and opposition leaders continue preparing for what is shaping up to be another high-stakes political contest. And across the country, wananchi are listening carefully, weighing promises, watching actions, and also waiting to decide the future direction of the nation at the ballot box. In every democracy, elections test not only leaders seeking power, but also the strength of institutions, the maturity of politics, and the unity of a nation determined to move forward in peace. That is all for today from Kenya Lens Media. We bring you news updates as they break. And kindly, if you're new here, consider subscribing.